Now, generalized anxiety disorder, it sounds like a big fancy word, okay? Basically, it just means, anxiety, you know what it means. Generalized just means in a lot of situations or about a lot of things, okay? And disorder means it interferes with your function. So, let me start off with a case. Maybe this will help explain it a little bit. This is a 19-year-old woman with a history of missing a lot of school as a child. She sees her family doctor frequently for different physical problems, but he can't seem to find anything physically wrong. He has diagnosed irritable bowel syndrome and headaches. He discusses anxiety with her and talks to her mother, who reports she has been a worrier since childhood. Just sort of like we were talking about. Some people are just made this way to be a little bit more worried about stuff. She too admits that she worries a lot and about a lot of things, and that it has caused her problems in school and now in work. She can't seem to stop worrying and needs constant reassurance, this is kind of a key, from her mom, friends, and coworkers. She has trouble sleeping, can't concentrate, is easily fatigued, and is irritable. Her family doctor, we'll talk about that in a second. That's more the treatment side of things. So what is GAD? I just call it GAD. GAD. I mean, it's easier to say than generalized anxiety disorder. The last talk, I probably should have used a little acronym instead of, I kept saying premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and I had to say it so many times, and people were probably just going, what the heck? So I'm just going to say from now on GAD, okay? GAD or GAD. So what is GAD? It's excessive worry or anxiety, okay? It has to be there for at least 6 months, and it has to interfere with your function, okay? When I say at least 6 months, usually it's longer. It's usually a lifelong thing. I mean, usually these are folks that are just kind of wired that way. They're from birth. I mean, they're kind of anxious as kids, and then all the way through, they're kind of anxious and nervous. I think it's just a difference in brain, in different brains. You guys know this, right? I mean, some people are very laid back about everything. Nothing seems to shake them. Other people are just kind of wired and a little more tightly, and a lot of things seem to shake them. I think nothing's wrong with either one of those things. It's just the variation amongst us. Some of us have dark hair. Some of us have light hair. There's a ton of different variations amongst human beings. Why would the brain be any different, right? It's not. So these folks are kind of wired tightly like that. They worry a lot about a lot of different things. This anxiety that interferes with their function, it usually interferes with their function in a lot of different arenas. So like at work, at school, and relationships, it's not typically just with one thing, like just work, and everywhere else the person's fine, because it's the brain that's the problem. It's the brain that causes it. It's not just the environment. The environment certainly can make it worse, but it's typically experienced in a lot of different areas. Now, the person can't control the worry. That's kind of a key, right? I mean, all of us have worries, right? But most of us, or the folks that don't have GAD, can sort of put the worries aside for a little bit, right? If we want to go see a movie or something, we can stop and watch the movie, and pay attention to what's going on in the movie long enough to get something out of it. Even if we had, some other kind of worry on our mind at the time we went in, right? With a person with GAD, that's hard to do. It's hard to focus on anything but the worries. The worry then has to be associated, here we go again, with the symptom thing, okay? There's 6 symptoms, and you have to have 3 or more of these. Don't you love psychiatry? It's not like a blood test or a brain scan or something easy. It's got to be 3 or more of 6 symptoms, or 4 or more of 13 symptoms. It's always challenging. I can never memorize all these things, so I have to have a little cheat sheet every time I see somebody anyway. So you're not alone if you can't remember all these things. So one of them is feeling restless or on edge. Okay, that's one of the 6. Being easily fatigued. Our person here had that. That's the second one. Third one is having sleep problems. The fourth one is having muscle tension. We've all had that, right? Fifth one is concentration problems. Can't concentrate real well. And the 6th one is irritability. So if you have 3 or more of those things, of those 6 things, plus the anxiety and worry that's hard to control and interferes with your function, that's GAD. Okay? The GAD, again, it's about a lot of different things. It's not about one particular thing. If it was just about one particular thing, it might be something. If you were just worried about having another panic attack, that's panic disorder probably, okay, or some other thing. If you're just worried about coming across a spider or something like that, it's probably a simple phobia of a spider or something. One of the things about these folks, I tend to think of traits, or the sort of the ways that the people with the brain that's wired like this, the ways that it presents, okay? These folks tend to do two things, okay? They catastrophize. Anybody, it's probably a weird word. What does that mean? Catastrophizing means you take something kind of little that most people would think is kind of little, and you worry about it so much that it becomes a huge thing, okay? You take something and you blow it way up into it's a huge, worry. And really, for the other people around you, they're sitting there going, now how did you get from here to there, okay? It doesn't make sense to them because it's not, their brain isn't made that way. To you or to the person with GAD, it makes a lot of sense. So that's catastrophizing, okay? The other thing is they tend to overestimate the risk of stuff. We talked a little bit about that because panic disorder folks do that too. Sort of like the person that's afraid to get on the airplane, right? 50% chance I'm going to die if I get on this airplane. I'm sure it's going to crash. Absolutely no, it is. Right? Well, probably not. I mean, they're overestimating the risk. The risk is, millions to one or something. That's another common thing with GAD, with GAD folks. Give you kind of an example. This is kind of a sort of humorous, but I sort of felt bad for the person. This is a person I was seeing in Newcastle, and I think they had this, and it was right after 9/11. It was kind of a serious time. We were all kind of worried about stuff, and we were talking about that, and she was worried about that, and I asked her, what do you think is the chance that the terrorists are going to hit Newcastle, Indiana? And I was kind of expecting to hear, well, kind of not really likely, because they're not going to hit a place like Newcastle probably, but she thought probably 70% chance. So overestimated the risk, I think. And I could have been wrong. It could have hit us the next day, I suppose. But they're going to hit someplace where they're going to get the most press and the most. They're going to hit. Try to wipe out something big and exciting. Not that Newcastle isn't, of course, but you know what I mean. Not compared to the World Trade Centers. There's a lot of physical symptoms that can go along with GAD, and so these folks end up with a lot of irritable bowels, sort of like the case I talked about, headaches, nausea, sweating, dry mouth, cold, clammy hands. Not to be too much of a shrink, but it's almost everybody assumes psychiatrists are analyzing people from day one as soon as they meet them, right? As soon as you walk into a room, everybody's like, and if they know you're a shrink, they're like cowering or so. I don't know. They think you're going to analyze them. Well, you can shake somebody's hand sometimes and tell are they comfortable in a social situation or not. If it's a cold and clammy hand, it's probably somebody that's got a lot of anxiety. And I don't know what the anxiety's about. I mean, it could be because I'm a shrink, oh my gosh. But it also could be that they're socially anxious, that just having to meet somebody new or something like that. So cold, clammy hands is one. Frequent urination, lump in the throat, trouble swallowing. Now nobody's going to shake my hand, are they? After the session's over, nobody's going to want to shake my hand. I shouldn't have said that. Because of these physical symptoms and because of the way our society is, nobody wants to go to their doctor and say, I'm nervous all the time, doc. But they'll go instead because of the diarrhea or because of the frequent urination or the irritable bowels or the headaches or whatever. And the doctor's, he does every test he can think of and can't find anything. And that's commonly how this occurs. And it takes a long time sometimes for doctors and for patients to figure out this is what it is because of that. Again, partly because of that, and also because this sort of interferes with the person's function. I mean, they're always worrying about something. So about 50% of these folks get depressed. The adults with GAD, they tend to worry a lot about job-related things, something bad happening to the kids or the health of their family or finances, okay? It's common stuff for adults. Kids, on the other hand, they worry about, their performance in school, or in sports or something like that. They worry they might be late to class or to wherever, They also worry about catastrophic events like earthquakes or nuclear war. And these kids tend to be sometimes overly conforming, conform easily with other kids and stuff. They're perfectionistic. I sort of mentioned that earlier. Unsure of themselves, and sometimes they kind of need a lot of reassurance and approval from mom or dad or teacher or whoever. Usually the onset of this is in childhood and adolescence, but again, it also can kick in the 20s. And about 3 to 5% of U.S. adults in the community suffer from GAD.